Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the March session of Dr. Jaspersoft. I'm your host, Paul Jimenez, and today I have one guest speaker for you. It will be Julio, and we'll have our round two of Web Studio. Today will be about mastering subreports, tables, and expressions in Jaspersoft Web Studio. I have a quick disclaimer. Then our next Dr. Jaspersoft session is the second Thursday of every month. The next one will be April 10th, 2025, and that will be about open telemetry. Today's agenda will be about subreports, passing data to subreports, nested subreports, expressions, and tables and lists. Now at this time, I will pass it off to Julio. Thank you, Julio.
Thank you, Paul. Not sure if you're able to see. I was just doing a check with the camera. And let me start by sharing my screen here. Okay. So, well, the agenda is it's pretty long. I'm not sure if we will able to, do all the things we would like to show, but we will try to do as much as possible. What we really want you to grasp at the end of this session is really what are the options when you're creating a report for adding things that comes from different data sources, not just one. This ways to get data inside a report from different sources is realized by using essentially three main methods. The first one is by using subreports, the second by using tables, and there is another one which is similar to tables but lighter, which is called lists. Also, in this session, we will work with a database, but later we will see how can we do the same things by using a JSON file that is structured in a way that is not just a list, but maybe it's a list with some other sub trees, let's say. So let's take a look to the report we are going to build today, and we will start by running it. Okay. So the report is about a fictional rocket building. We will have a cover, and then we will have a list of a bill of materials. Next to it, we want to see some characteristics of our rocket. So we will see how to create data coming from the main data set and then a sub data set here. Next to it, another sub report, in this case for characteristics. And at the end of the report, we will print a table with some operating instructions for our rocket. Okay. All right, so let's get started. We want to save some time, so I already prepared what will be our cover here. It's called Apollo XL cover.jrxml. So if I open it, this is just a simple single page report which uses only the table band. The table band is maximized. Also notice that I did not want to use borders for this report, so it's a really full page. And here I have placed a couple of elements that we will check in a second. Also, this cover is not getting any data for real. That's why we set this report with the when no data show all section no details. This has the effect that even if we don't provide any data to this report, we will still print bands like the title, the summary, and this is perfect for a cover. I don't want data for a cover. I just want to show my cover and maybe parameterize the information, so like it may be the title or other things like the date in this case, or the project name. And for this reason, right, we added to this report in the main data set here, parameter project. This parameter project is used in this expression. Now, an expression in JasperReports is a way to define what to print in some text field or how to create some complex value in other contexts. We will see some of that contexts, but it could be the calculation of a variable, the definition of an expression to locate an image, and things like that. So this is Java, right? This is Java code. And in spite of being Java code, it's just a single expression, right? You don't have complex flow controls like if, else. You have just a single simple expression. And the plus in particular here is what concatenates two strings. The project parameter, this $p introduce the parameter project, right? Plus version 10 is just a static string. Okay, this is just the basic of an expression. Let's take a look at a little bit more complex expression. This prints the date of today. And to do that, we concatenate the string print on to a special function that is called date format. And this function is taking two arguments, two parameters. One as another function, which is actually executed, is now, and then a pattern. This is what is called the way you want to format a date. Now is just another function that creates the current date. Now, if you use Java, or if you are a Java developer, you don't recognize really this date format now things. This looks much more like some kind of, well, I would say Excel kind of expressions, right? With the simple functions like that. Well, in effect, inside JasperReports, and I'm just pointing here to a page that is it will be in the slides, by the way. JasperReports provide plenty of simple functions, Excel-like, I would say, very well documented, that allows to do very basic things like managing time or perform conditions. So even if expression, you cannot use complex if-else kind of structures, you still have a way to do it, right? And under mathematical things to calculate average or maximum, minimum, and all these things. Now, why this function? Because they are much simpler to understand than Java until you are not a Java developer, right? So these are in some way syntactical sugar to create complex expressions in JasperReports. So in this case, date format will format the date with year, month, date, and will take the current time. So if I run my report, I see here that is print out the date of today. Printed on, I'm not sure if you're able to read it, so let's make this a little bit bigger. Here, printed on, and here is the date of today. All right, so here is our cover. Let's see how we can use it inside our report. So we can start by creating from scratch the report we were just showing a few minutes ago with all our sub-report. So let's start with a new report. Let's save this report inside, well, inside here, my root, yeah, my root here. And I will call this report, let's say, DRJ, which stands for Dr. Jasper Master. Okay, so we can clearly identify this along with the other files. Okay, we have this Dr. Jasper file, and we want to print something. Now, if I print this report right now, it's an empty report because there is no data, right? Now, I can definitely use the trick and say, well, print all section no details if there is no data, and I will get a blank page. But this is not what I want for my real report. This is good for my cover, but not for my report. So let's find a way to get data for this simple report. For that, I will use my data set, and in particular, in order to get data, I will make use of a data adapter. And I defined a few data adapters here, in particular this one, with this, which is pointing to a database. And this database, well, it's just a Postgres database where the data that we want to work with resides. Let me get this. All right, open. That's not taking. Let me reload this page a second. Well, let me save this. Did I save this? Okay, let's reload this. And we go with Dr. Jasper Master and see here what's happening with my selector. Okay, now it selected my Apollo XML database. By default, we always use SQL, so I don't have to select a language. And I open up my query dialog here, my query editor. I can click get metadata to access all the data of my database. But in this case, there is not really a table we want to query, because all this data actually refer to the Apollo XL project, our rocket, right? So I just need a fake way in this case to have at least one page or one detail. So I will select something, right? Something like, let's say, Apollo XL as project.
Hi, Julio.
And
Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt. Quick question. We have a
sure.
question. Will this work on the latest version of the community version of Studio, these functions?
Oh, yeah. These are part of the community edition. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And also the users can add their own one if they want. Actually, there is also a way to create custom functions. All right. So here is a simple query. There is no form from something, right? Just select the string as project. I click on read fields to get my fields. If I preview, okay, now I have a single record with the value of project Apollo. And that's what I need to print something. So I will drag my project here, and then I run this, and I finally have a report with actually 2 pages, because I have also a title here and my string Apollo here. Perfect. Okay, now we have some data. What we want to do is to add the cover. So the cover, as we said, is provided by a subreport. So I drag the subreport element here. I just make the title small. I don't need a big title because the title will take the space required by the subreport anyway. So what I want to do here is just to arrange or adapt my subreport to fill everything. Okay, now I have a cover now. I have page header, page footer, and detail. So let's run my report. And okay, let's see here. I added the subreport, but I did not specify which subreport to use or which file used for this subreport. So it did not print anything. So let me add a subreport. So I will pick my Apollo XL cover here. Here we are. And then let's try to run this again. And now I have the cover. The cover with all the defaults values here. And then I have my record Apollo X. Okay, the first thing I want to do is to pass some data to my subreport in order to customize that thing I put in the footer. And what I need to do that is to set parameter values. So I go to values, I add a value, and if you remember, I told you that this subreport accepts a parameter called project. And well, we need to set a value for this parameter, and this value that we want to use is the field project that we are getting as data from our report. Now, the name project and project is just a coincidence, right? It could have been just, I don't know, footer value, and the data I pass here as could be a field, a parameter, an expression, in general, whatever I need. So let's try to run this now. And what I should see here in the footer is my project name. And this is actually what I'm getting, right? Apollo XL version 1.0 printed on and the date of today. Perfect. Okay, so we have seen the first typical use case of subreports, which is adding sections in our subreports that are easy to reuse by parameterizing them. They do not require data, or maybe use data, but we will see how to use data in a second. And they are extremely useful for repetitive parts like these page footer or page header or covers, like in this case. All right, let's move on and try to see how to organize our report here. So what we want to do, if based on what was our initial design, is to have two subreports, one next to each other, right? Maybe one a little bit bigger than the other, because here we will have the characteristics of our rockets, and in this one that will be definitely bigger, we want to put the bill of materials for our rocket. So before importing anything, we will have to build our subreports. Now, a subreport is nothing else than a simple report or Jasper report. So what we want to do is create a new report, and I will call this report something like Dr. Jasper Bill of Material. Here it is. Now, what about the size of my report? Well, being this something that is meant to be inserted or injected inside another report, the first things I definitely want to do is to remove the margins. So in the page format, I will set my margin to 0 like that. Still, the page is wide, pretty much as like another report. To work more quickly, I will duplicate my tab here. So I can work at the same time on two different tabs, but in particular, what I want to do is work on two different reports, right, at the same time. So let's go here. We want our subreport to fit this area. How wide is this area? Well, this area is 333 pixels. Let's make 350. Let's make it a little bit bigger, something like this, right? Well, 360. All right, let's go with 360. I will go here and I will set the width of my report to 360. Remember, we are in the business of pixel perfect reporting here, so it makes totally sense to talk about pixel. Pixel, by the way, are on a measure of 62 or 72, sorry, 72 pixel per inch. If we want to actually measure this stuff in a different way by using inches, for instance, or centimeters or whatever. But the conversion is this one, 72 pixel per inch. All right, so let's start adding data to our subreport. I will go with dataset. And since I'm still creating a report from scratch at the end of the day, which is definitely the goal, the final goal is to use this as a subreport, but I'm creating this report from 0. So I want, at least at development time, use a data adapter to get the data for my subreport. So the first thing I need to do is to select my data adapter. No, I'm not sure why it's not picking up. Let me reload this. Maybe that's my build right now. But by the way, I'm using right now a development build, right? It's not a final version. So be nice if I see some errors here. Definitely, that's my development environment right now. Okay. All right, we say this 360, okay, and we want to save this. Now let's go to the data set and select. Here I have my repo data here. Okay, let's select the data. All right. Now I go to the SQL editor, and inside the tables, I see I have a components table. That's exactly what I want to query. So I will select star from components, read fields. Here I have my fields. I can preview the data, and these are all the components that makes up my rocket. All right, let's use them inside my report. Close this, and now I can organize my report pretty much how I want. So I can put a title here, like something like bill of materials, right? Bill of material. Uh, and I will use a bigger font here. So static text. I will use an 80 pixel, maybe bold. All right, and now I have the freedom to decide. We don't need a page header, we don't need a page footer, and we are able to decide how to show this material. Now, this material, each material has probably a name, right, and maybe a description. And the description may be quite long, so I expect this may extend a little bit. That's why I want to set this as a stretchable text. Is the text that should be able to stretch the height. And then let's put a couple of other things like the quantity, how much of these things I need, and maybe the weight and cost, right? Weight and finally cost here, maybe under this. Okay, what happens if the description grows? Well, this element will grow this way and will overwrite the others one. So in order for the other fields here to get pushed down, what I need to do is to tell them in the properties that the position of this element should be something either float or relative to bottom, right? And this way, this will be free to grow without going over this, and these elements will be pushed down. By default, elements are relative to the top, which essentially does not get pushed down if something grows inside the report. All right, finally, we want to put here a line like this in order to divide each bill of material. And let's make the color of this line some kind of light gray, like this. And then I will make this small. All right, let's run our report. Let's just make this bold and a little bit bigger, just to see better what the material is, and preview. And here we are, we have a list of materials. Now, definitely, I could have modified or designed my subreport here to arrange these things in some kind of table shape, right? So this is a way to create data or present data in a way that resemble a table. But we will see in a few minutes what really a table is, what are the advantages over a subreport to use a table, when it's better to use a table, and when subreports simply provides much more freedom in the layout and the way I present things. All right, as little small details here, I like to align those two elements on the right and set a pattern. Now, a pattern is a way to specify how my numbers will be formatted in this case. And I'm going to use something like this, which is the standard way to tell I want always two decimals And if there are thousands, this is the thousand separator. And so in this way, when I run my report, we'll see I get a nice formatting of the numbers. All right. Good. Now we have our subreport. And what we want to do here is try to remove the data adapter. Now we are essentially not saying anymore how to get the data for this report. Yes, we still have the query, but without a data adapter, we are not providing the connection against which we want to run this query. So the result, if also save this report, is that if I run this report, it's empty. I mean, there is no way for this report to get the data. To get the data, I need to set a data adapter. But that's true for the reports that lives by its own life. But I want this report to reside inside another report. And the other report is the one we have here, which is the master. And the master is already getting a connection for its main data set. So is a way to use this data set for the subreport? Of course, yes. So let's remove this placeholder and finally import our subreport here. We take all the space that we reserved, and we don't need so much space here. And we need to tell, hey, the subreport I want to use is the one that we just created, which is inside the main folder here, repo, and it's the Dr. Jasper bill of material. That's my subreport. Okay, save this. If I run it, it will not work yet. Why? Well, because I told Jasper what subreport I want, but I did not provide any data for this subreport. And as we have seen, without providing any data to the subreport, it will just print an empty page, which in the context of a report execution is just nothing, right? So let's see how we can provide data. We have seen how to provide parameters. That was for the cover, for instance. When we want to provide data, we need to go to data source. And in data source, we have two options to provide data to a subreport. We can either provide a connection, which is essentially what you do when working with JDBC connection or SQL, or a data source, which is pretty much all the other options. So here, I will provide to the connection for the subreport the connection used for the main report. And this connection is stored in a special parameter called report connection. So this is really what you want to do 99% of the time when you work with SQL. If you have a subreport, the subreport will probably also use a SQL. You want to set as connection for the data source of the subreport, the report connection. Let's see what happened now. On the second page, I finally see my bill of material properly filled in. And of course, it will stop whenever it stops, right? And it's also taking only the portion in terms of width that I reserved to this subreport. All right, let's create quickly the second subreport, this one. This will be just for showing the characteristic of my rocket. Let's move to the other tab here. Let's take what we did for the bill of materials, and let's save this. Let's modify this. Let's call it characteristics or properties, right? And let's save this as a different file so we don't start from scratch. And I would call this Dr. Jasper characteristics. All right, save it. And well, the characteristics will use the same connection we used before. So in order to design the report, I want to use my data adapter here. And in the query, this time, instead of selecting everything from components, I want to select everything from characteristics. All right, let's read fields. Now we have some quite different fields here. Let's preview them. All right, mass, length of the rocket, diameter of the rocket. Okay, these are exactly what I was looking for. So this time, let's organize our subreport in a way that resemble a table. So we will have here let's say the fields here. We have the name, right? The name is actually just like before, a field available. And then next to it, we want something like the value. We have a field called value. So let's remove this weight and take the value. And finally, next to the value, we want to put here the measure unit of this value, or simply unit. All right, so let's move this here. Of course, I can actually zoom in a little bit in order to see better what I'm designing. All right, and let's also, I don't know, set this one. Maybe we can put them at the center vertically. All right. And what we want here are some labels, some kind of table headers, right? So I just duplicated with copy and paste my fields. I drag them in the title band. You see these are now in the title band, but these are still fields and I don't want field. So if I use these three dots, have a convenient method to convert this to static text. Now these are static text, they are no longer text fields. And so I can go here and type something like name like this, or value, or even unit. And since these are table headers, I really want to format them a little bit differently. Both are bold, 12, and maybe they have a non-transparent background, like this one, with the back color, which is like a very light gray, like this. All right. Okay, let's try to run our characteristic subreport. Perfect. It looks like actually I was thinking. So let's use this subreport in the main report. Again, what I really want to do is go to dataset here and remove this if in order to avoid the report to use this one. Please note anyway that I can leave this one, but if I explicitly pass uh, um, a data source or a connection, I'm pretty sure this connection will take priority over what is specified in the data adapter field here. In other words, this data adapters is used only if no other ways to get data has been provided. All right, let's save this. Go to the main report, remove this placeholder. Oh, well, something I did not think about. We reuse a report which is very wide here, very wide. And the truth is that here I had something like, I don't know, probably, let's see again here. Let's see how wide here's this. Appearance is 189 pixels, so very narrow. So let's go here and properties of my page. I will put 190. Okay, now I know how small this thing is. And well, we will try to arrange our fields to fit whatever we have at disposal. Maybe we make the unit a little bit smaller here, like that. And maybe I will move this a little bit that, and maybe a little bit more room for the name. And finally, I may want to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, let's fix the latest details here. This one and this one. Now, what happened if the subreport is too big? Well, it's not really a big deal. It's just that it will be cut when it will be printed. Also, the vertical size of the report does not really matter when it's used as subreport inside a report. What really matters when I drag a subreport like this one, well, sorry, subreport. Oh, sorry, just across that subreport like this one is the top left corner. This is the only things that really matters. Whatever overflow on the right will be cut, and whatever overflow on the bottom will follow the typical report pagination. That's it. All right, we have a subreport. Now let's specify which subreport we want to use, and in this case is the characteristic subreport. And for the connection, we want to specify the connection like we have seen before. All right. Now I save this and let's run and see what happens. Okay, there was a problem. The cannot because there's a SQL connection. I specified the wrong parameter. Let's double check here. Right, I specified something that is not the connection. I click on the wrong parameter, so it's complaining, hey, it's not the connection. What are you giving me? So here it's just the report connection. That's the parameter we want to use. All right, let's save again and try again. All right, and here we go. We have the first subreport and the second one running next to the first one. Now, in spite of which one will be bigger, well, the pagination will continue, right? Okay, cool. Now, we have seen several ways to use the subreports. Again, as I say, I can use just much less space here for my subreport. After all, they will always take whatever requires to feed the document. So the subreports always grow vertically. The only result of having my subreports element big like this, in this case, just to be clear, of a height of 126 pixels, is that even if the report does not have data at all, it will take at least this space. So if I want the subreport to really take no space at all, I may want to really make that really small. Or I can also say in this subreport level, actually in the appearance, if this element, let me just take one. If this element is not printed, well, just leave, right, whatever space is taken from it. Print one, yeah, well, I don't see that. But this is what you can do definitely with other elements like this one. So if this is now, you may want to say, okay, remove line when blank. Okay, this is not available for subreports. So I was not correct. But this tells that if this field is blank, is null, project is not defined, this will result in something that is nothing. Well, if this is the case, just remove the entire piece of report so we don't print an empty space. But in case of subreport, well, the height defines the minimum space allocated, and then whatever is required is taken automatically by the subreport. All right, so let's now create a table. And to do that, or in order to keep everything clean, I want to create a new detail band. We can have as many detail bands. We can also specify if some bands will be shown or not based on which conditions, and the condition can be set with this print when expression. But in our case, we want to always print everything. In this table, we want to print some instructions on how to operate our rocket. Now, the first things we need when we want to create data with a table is the data set. Now, this process is in some way the same that we take when we create a subreport, because when we create a subreport, right, the first thing we do is not start designing. It's most of the time go to dataset and define our dataset. In example, by specifying the data adapter and then creating a SQL, right? This is what is called the main dataset. But that other report may have multiple datasets. The main dataset is the one that drives the report execution. The sub-datasets are the ones that can be used to populate special elements such as charts, crosstabs, tables, lists, and so on. So let's start by creating our sub-dataset. I will hit plus here. I will give a name to this dataset. Let's call it instructions, right? The operating instructions. Instruction, here we are. All right, and we activate this dataset in order to modify it. Now, the second thing we want to do, at least now that we are designing, we want to provide a data adapter. And once again, the data adapter that we are going to use is the Apollo database data adapter. And here we can again write a query. Remember, if instructions is selected, we are operating on this sub dataset, not the main dataset. But the concept is the same. I can click the get metadata to get the metadata, like I would do with the main dataset, right? It get metadata, it get the metadata. The same is for the sub dataset. But in this case, I want to get the instructions table. So I will do select star from instructions. All right, select star from instructions, read fields. Oh, something wrong. Instructions, here it is. Read fields, okay. And now I have my instructions here. And that's it. I define my sub dataset now. So I close this. So save this, close the query editor. Now I have this dataset that I can use for whatever I need. Now, I would have, the plan was to show you how to create a table by means of a wizard, but I had a technical issue today. And again, this is really my development machine, so I'm not able to show you that. Sorry about that. So we will have to create the table from scratch, but this is also a very good exercise. The step of creating my instruction dataset would have been required anyway, which means running the wizard, which by the way will be available from the next version of the JasperReports Web Studio. Without having a sub dataset, the first step would have stopped me saying, hey, you know what, I need some data for the wizard to run. So please go back to your dataset tab, create a dataset for me, and then come back here. Well, we will have to go manual mode, all right? So the first thing I want to do is to drag my table here. Now, when I create a table like this one, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. And this may be a little bit confusing, let's say, because if someone approaches JasperReports for the first time, he may think this is a table with just 5 empty records. But the truth is that these cells here represent 5 sections of the table. And this table right now just have a single column. What are these sections? And I double click this to highlight them. Well, the first cell here is the table header. Then we have the column header. Let's make this bigger. Then we have the so-called detail, the column footer, and the table footer. Now, this name should click in your mind, meaning these are pretty much the same section that we can find inside a report. We have a header, a column header, a detail, a column footer, and a page footer. Well, the logic for the table is the same. For each real record we have, we can group this record in groups, which will provide for us a special row to add group informations. And on top of this, header informations and so on. Okay, so table header, column header. If I have groups, I would have the group row, and then finally the detail, and so on. Now, with this button here, I can add columns to my table on the right and on the left. Let's go to report here, and let's make this a little bit bigger so we know where are the bounds of our table. And let's play with the columns in order to have them bigger. So I will go up to here at least, right? And then up to here. All right. Sorry, I just arrange the last column. Select this column here and make this bigger. Okay, and now let's make this smaller. All right, and in this way, I can essentially arrange all my columns. Now, we really don't need the table row. So we can just either collapse it and make it 0 height, or which is probably the simple way to remove the table header, or we can just say we don't need the table header. We want the column header, but we are not interested in column footer and table footer. And so you have seen that some of the rows are gone now. And we remain with the table, the column header, and the detail. And this is where we are going to put our data. Good. Time now to connect data with our table. So we go to properties. This is the properties of the table. Go to data. And here, finally, we can say, hey, as a data set, use instructions. Now, the table will use data coming from the instruction dataset. Just like the subreport, I'm able to provide a connection, a data source, or even parameters if my sub dataset would require parameters. I don't know, for filtering purposes, for instance. So what we want to do really in this case is pass the connection. So report connection. And with this, we could not even require the data adapter anymore. Now, we have the connection set. What we can do now is I have the dataset instructions selected. We can drag our fields inside our table. So we may have the ID of the step. We or actually this is just an ID. It's not really the number of the step. This is what we really want, is the number of the step here. And then we want task here and a component ID. Well, probably not very interesting, but let's print this. Well, wrong. I actually dropped this in the wrong part of the table. This is supposed to be the column header. So we want to transform this to labels. And just like we have done before, convert this to static text, and I will call this step, and then the task to run, and then component ID or whatever. The data that we want to really put is here, right? Step here, and task, and and component ID. All right. Okay. Now, of course, we may want to make this a little bit nicer. So inside the properties of this text field, we want to align everything horizontally and so on. And maybe if we want, we can also specify more information like the padding and this kind of things. For now, I will just take my table row here. Actually, what I really want to select here are the cells. So if I click here, see, I'm selecting this element, right, which is inside my cell. My cell can have a lot of complex layout, not just a text field, right? But the text field is what I am going to use for now. It's taking the wall space of the cell. But if I want to change the cell itself, I need to select this item here, which defines the container of my cell. And here, where I see cells, I can see the border options, and I can say, well, the bottom, I want a solid line of 1 pixel. Here is, and here will create for me 1 line pixel border on the bottom. All right, let's save this. Let's go back to the report and let's see what happened when I run this report. All right, no errors, good. I go fast to the last page, and in the last page, we see our table printed. Now, the fact that it's on another page is incidental, right? It's just that my subreport finished here. So my table is printed on the next page, but it could have easily been on any page on the previous page, for instance, on any position of the previous page. But we have seen now how we were able to get data for the table by using a sub data set. Now, what's special about this page or this table? Well, by the fact that I'm using a table instead of using a subreport, thanks to the implicit metadata that a table carries on, this table, when the report is viewed inside what we call an interactive viewer, like this one, is that if I click on the table, I can interact with this table. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So I can, for instance, change the order of the task column. So let's say if I click sort descending, this will kick a new execution of the report. And if I go to the last page, we see that the tasks have been sorted in descending way. I can change the sorting. And again, the report will be executed and I will see my data. Now, when I say the record will be executed, it's not really super true. It's just that it's re-rendered, but the interactive viewer is probably backended by some backend like a JasperReports server, for instance, that's just to name one. that knows how to keep some kind of data snapshot to make the execution the second time or during the interaction much faster. Now, probably not very useful in a pixel perfect report like this one. But if you plan to use a report inside a dashboard or a more sophisticated view designed for the web, which is exported, like in this case, in HTML and viewed through a browser, if you are using something like Visualize.js or an interactive viewer, you have this possibility that you get automatically when using a table component. Otherwise, the difference between a table component and the subreport lies mostly in two main differences. The first, which is the subreport, lives in a different file. The table is embedded inside the report. Now, good and bad things. The good thing is that I don't have to open another file to add it to my report if I need to change a table, but I'm not able to reuse this subreport over several reports. I mean, the table is inside the report, cannot be reused, while a subreport can be used across several other reports. All right, so cool, we have seen this working with SQL, but what happened when I work with different type of data sources? So the next part of this presentation, I will try to go as fast as possible, is to see how we can use a JSON file to populate our subreports. Remember how this report is done. We do a first query that selects just a fake record for the project. Then we reuse the connection to create another query for this, another query for this, and another query for this with the sub data set. If this is going to be repeated across, I don't know, 1,000 customers, I end up creating 1, 2, 3 by 1,000, 3,000 queries. And this may not be very efficient. Of course, it's possible that there is no other way because I want to stick with the SQL database, or maybe I'm able to generate this data all at once with some procedure and create a big JSON file, which contains the project information, the bill of material, the characteristics of my rocket, and also the instructions to operate the rocket. Well, this is what I tried to model in this JSON that I'm going to show you. So inside data, I have this Apollo Excel JSON. And in this file, here I have the list of components. Then I have the list of characteristics at the end here. And I have my instructions, all inside a single file. Let's try to modify our main report and the subreports to use this file instead of the first one. Let's start from the beginning, which is the main report. The main report right now is using a database data adapter. Let's point to the data adapter for the JSON file. Now, I'm not going to show you how to create this data adapter. It's very simple. This JSON data adapter is pointing to the JSON I just showed you, okay? Eventually, if we have time or if there are questions, I may show this later. Now, of course, this is a JSON data adapter, so SQL query is not going to work. In this case, if I get the metadata, I would expect my JSON structure here to appear. Now, well, not sure why it's not getting the data. I hope this actually works. So let me save this for a second and let's verify my data adapter. So let's go here, go to JSON data adapter. Let's test it if everything is okay. All right. So let's reload this just in case. All right, let's go to the data set. Let's, oh, clearly I have to select a language and I will use JSON for my particular query here. By the way, it did not took the right data adapter. This is because I did not save it. So data JSON data adapter. That's what I want. All right, let's try to get the metadata, and here are my nodes of the file. Well, for the main report, just like here, we did not select really anything special. The same will be done for the JSON. The JSON itself represents my rocket. So I don't want to list anything. It's just one record represented by the root of my JSON file. So if I read fields here, I will see something like name, component, instruction, characteristic. Name is probably the only thing that I'm interested into, which is the name of the project. Now, name is what before we recorded as project. So first thing to make this adaptation, let's go to edit mode here, is to change the way we pass the parameter to our subreport. If you remember, we set a parameter by passing the project name. Project is no longer an available field, but we have now name, right? Name, perfect. Okay, now what happens if we run this? Well, what I expect, and also this needs to be fixed, is no longer project, is name. All right. Now, if we run this report now, I expect to see Apollo Excel. I also expect to see my cover with the proper Apollo Excel coming from my JSON file. And if you also pay attention, there is a line here. This is not the Apollo Excel of before. This is the new one that we are reading from the JSON file. But what about the rest of the report? Well, we don't have anything in the subreport, but magically we have something in characteristics. Why? Well, because in characteristic we left the data adapter set inside the subreport. So since we are not passing any data because there is no longer any database connection to pass, the subreport tries the card of using the data adapter. But we will leave this like that. We will change this in a second. So how can my subreport, and then we go to the subreport here, be able to get the data when using a JSON data adapter? Let's take a look to our bill of material here. And let's check what fields are we expecting. In the dataset fields, we expect an ID, name, description, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the JSON, we don't really have an ID. Trust me, otherwise I will have to show you. But we just have name, description, quantity, const. So let's delete this. And so we want to just remove this field. And this is now required to run the report after all. And let's save it. And we will now pass these informations directly to this guy here, to the subreport. Let's see how. Well, I have my subreport element defined here. We are pointing to the right direction now, but we have an issue because we don't have a report connection. We want to pass data to this subreport by means of a data source. And how? Well, here, thankfully, the expression utilities, let's call it like that we have in JasperReports, provides a very nice function that is called subDataSource. This works perfectly in case of JSON and XML data sources. Let's see how it works. We have all the bill of materials stored in a branch of our JSON file, which points to an object called components. Let's take a look to it. Let's duplicate this so we have a third window, which allows us to take a look to our JSON file. See, we have name that we are using, Apollo Excel. Then we have components, and each component has exactly what we need for each of our components item. Name, description, quantity, and we also have other things that we are not using right now. So let's assume that this component is available. So the expression we want to write here is something like sub data source, and create this data source out of components branch. Now here we are really making a strong assumption, which is all the fields that will be used or registered in the subreport will be available in nodes under the components tree of my JSON file, which means if I have name defined as a field inside the subreport, I want name to be here, description, quantity, and so on. Okay, let's save this and try to run and see if it works. All right, did not work. So let's check better what's the issue here. So we have the sub data source here. We have component. This is a singular. Probably it was plural. So I'm just referencing the wrong name here. So the result was nothing. Let's try component and also double check that is correct. Component. All right. Let's save and try again. All right, now we see that the data is now populated out of our JSON file. By the way, the data in the JSON, the data in the SQL database is different. So, or not identical, let's say. So it will be easy to double check that this data is correct. Well, the same can be done for characteristics. So let's do this. So I just copy this expression. We now understood what is the trick to provide data. We don't want to provide any connection. And we just use the sub data set here. And in this case, I'm going now to double check the file. It's called characteristics. Okay, let's go here and say characteristics. Okay, let's save and let's try to run and see what happens. And see now that we are no longer use the data adapter. That it's clear at this point that we are using the data that has been provided directly from the main report, which has precedence over the data adapter referenced by our subreport. Well, just to complete our demo, let's do the same for the table. The table, what we need to do, we have seen that is using this second sub data set, but the place where we specify connection and parameter and so on is really part of the table definition, and in particular inside the data section. We no longer want to use connection, but this time also we want dynamically create a sub data set, again by taking the sub data source function. And in this case, if I remember well, but I'm going to check here, I'm going to take instructions. And with instructions like that, here, I'm going to save this. I expect now the table to have a set of instructions around. Okay, here, good. And this is a good error that shows something that is interesting. Now, the error is telling me, hey, you are telling me that step is an integer. but I'm not getting an integer. So what's going on here? Well, let's check a look at our JSON file. And step actually is not an integer, it's a string. That's because I define differently the JSON and the database. So let's change or adapt my table in order to show here the string. First, I need to change the sub data set here because I set step to be an integer. Actually, this was done magically by my read field when I was working with SQL. I really want to say, hey, this is a string, sorry, this is not an integer. Also, I may want to make some room for my step. So I can make this, oh, sorry, not this one. I want to get this, the column, right? So I can the column. By the way, if I'm here, I can click on, let's see, there is a way to essentially select the container. Well, I will take the container from here, and I want to make this column a little bit smaller and this column a little bit larger. All right. Okay, happy now. I hope I did not go too far here. Otherwise, Jasperreport will complain. All right. Sorry, I changed the zoom here. Okay. I changed my data set. I made some room here. There is nothing more I have to do. Let's go to the last page here. And now we see that I have step and task, right? Step no longer being an integer. And also there is no such component ID in my JSON. So I will get a null value here. So what was the benefit here of using a JSON? Well, if I have the opportunity, which is not always the case, I can run a report made of many sub portions created either with table or sub reports that are all fed by the single read of my JSON file. And this is extremely, extremely fast because I don't have to run queries over queries. I have everything, all the data, like a giant data snapshot ready to use. And well, I think we arrived pretty much at the end of the presentation. Hopefully this was all clear, and let's see if we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Julio. We currently don't have any questions open right now, but I appreciate you presenting. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Hey everyone, thank you for joining our March session of Dr. Jaspersoft. As always, you can find our resources here. These will be posted quickly, about a day or two, on our YouTube page as well as our Dr. Jaspersoft site. So you'll have access to these resources. And also, as always, please engage with us. Post our community, log a case, email me, whatever you need to do. We'd like to hear back from you. Again, thank you everyone for joining. We do appreciate it. And everyone take care and have a good day.
Thank you.